Battlefield Vietnam's Operation Remembrance mod is finally here, and it has added heaps of new features in almost every aspect of the game, such as new gameplay mechanics, weapons, vehicles, factions, maps and alterations to originals and popular maps, as well as a literal hand of God, or should I say Ho Chi Minh, where you can pretend to be the US president and point your hand at something and a bomb will land there within a couple of seconds. But I'm going to show you what this mod has to offer and why you might want to get those old CDs or pursue alternate methods of getting this game, and there's a link in the video description, top pinned comment to download it. I can't link where to get a copy of Battlefield Vietnam, nor can I promote methods to get it because of YouTube's policy, but the advice I can give you is don't get it from the Russian website. I made that mistake, and yeah, my computer has an STD now. But before we get into the video, I have something special that I need to show you. Hey, don't get mad at me, it's literally in the game, therefore you have to do it. But honestly, thank you to Daniel Douglas for creating this mod and giving a shit about a game that a lot of people, especially younger people, might have forgotten about or might not even be aware of, and probably think that Bad Company 2 is the only Battlefield Vietnam game. And thank you for the little Easter egg and all the work you've done for this mod as well as Battlefield Vietnam. But enough talking, let's get into the meat of the mod. So let's start off with the maps. Can't have a good game with bad maps. Most of Battlefield Vietnam's original maps were good. Operation Irvine and Flaming Dart, they are my favorites as well as a lot of other people's favorites. They have had their names changed as well as the map layout being changed pretty significantly. The giant mountain on Irving has been removed. Instead of a ZSU-57, we have multiple Dushka placements as well as the addition of new helicopters and vehicles. On Operation Flaming Dart, we have an aircraft carrier, but that's not the best part. A little battleship or destroyer, I don't know the military classification, but it's a big boat with guns on it, and just like in Battlefield 1942, you can get into it and drive it around, and that is one feature that got overlooked from 1942 in my opinion, so I'm glad that it's been put back into this game. Another cool thing is the addition of the SA-2. It's so much fun sitting in the back of the map with one of these and just firing rockets into the distance, and you see in the kill feed that you managed to hit someone. Speaking of rocket launchers, I always felt that the BM-21 to be underwhelming in the game and sort of not have too much of a purpose. Like, I very rarely like to use it in the base game, but a fantastic gameplay addition allows us to actually see where our rockets and artillery shells go. Sure, in Battlefield 4 we have the M142, but this is Vietnam, we don't have satellite laser imagery. We need to do some guesstimation. But sitting at the back of the map with the Katusha, I'm sorry if I butchered that, or the BM-21 is just so much fun. And the weapon and vehicle sounds have also been changed to sound like the real life counterparts. But speaking of maps, we have Australian based maps such as the Battle of Longtan, Operation Bribey, as well as a Walk in the Light Green. We also see the addition of new maps, which is good because even though like I'm going to be playing the Anzac maps as well as the map that I played right after the Anzacs was Operation Irvine or Nung River Mouth, and Operation Whispered Breath, which is Operation Flaming Dart. It was good to have new maps to make it feel like a new game, if you know what I mean, because I don't want to go back and play like, oh, Quang Tree or Hue City again, because even though in the original games I wasn't too much of a fan of those maps, I can't even remember some of the other base maps because I never really got into them, but having these new maps, and some of them are really freaking good, especially Siege of Khe Sanh is probably one of my favorite maps because it's like pretty, I wouldn't say close quarters, but it's pretty concentrated into one area, and it's just absolute pandemonium with like explosions everywhere. Outpost Red Haze, a very close quarters map, which is really freaking fun because it's like very linear and narrow in absolute pandemonium, just running around with a knife and trying to stab people. But I do recommend not having a high bot count on this map because it is, yeah, it's pandemonium, but heaps of new maps. You will not get bored with them, I can guarantee that. But if you thought that the guy in the ZSU-57 was annoying, well, enjoy the ZU-23, because that's even worse. Think is a little freaking brute machine and can annihilate literally anything that flies. But yeah, there are a lot of anti-air methods that have been added to the game, so if you're a pilot, then well, best of luck to you. But let's move on to the vehicles. We have a large variety of new vehicles such as the A1 Sky Raider, which is my personal favorite plane because it isn't as fast as jets, which means you can take your time setting up strafing runs, but that also means that you are vulnerable to anti-air means. But there are different versions of of the F4 Phantom as well as the A7 Corsair. But for the Phantom, we have some that have an autocannon underneath, but it turns into a literal A10 Warthog. Some have bombs, rockets, napalm. There's also a secondary seat that's been added which can fire rockets as well as deploy flares to counter heat-seeking missiles. There are different variations of the Huey, Bushranger, Cobra with different armaments, which is nice to have a variety, because using the same type of helicopter over and over again in the original game, kind of became boring after a while. It's nice to have a variation, but seriously, one of the Bushrangers have these. They can literally decimate most things that they land near. There is the addition of the AC-47 Spooky. Now, I won't lie when I say this thing was a pain to get the hand of, but once you do, it's so cool just strafing around the point and unloading into them. And there's also a transport version where you can drop supplies as well as paratroopers. The ability to drop supplies also applies to the C-47, Huey, and me, depending on the variant which you have, which a person on one of my videos actually told me is not pronounced M-I, it's pronounced me. And you know those things where you get corrected on and you look back on your mistake, you're like, wow, I am a moron. And every time in my older videos where I said MI8 or MI28, I'm going to cringe. But moving on to tanks, the crosshairs have been removed unless you press the C key. In terms of movement, they aren't as agile like in the original. The turret rotation also has been pretty nerfed, but that's a good thing because the purpose of this mod was to make the game more realistic, similar to how I went from like World of Tanks to War Thunder. Vehicle movement was night and day, and the same can be said about this. Some new tanks that I've seen are the T-34-85, the Ontos or Ontos, I don't know how to pronounce that. I don't even know if you can call that a tank, but it has tracks and it fires a freaking big off rocket, so I'm just gonna call it a tank. Different variations of the troop car. Some have machine guns, some a recoilless rifle at the back of them. Another cool little thing is with the Vespa, you can actually adjust which way you look. Sure, you can look around, but if you press the A or D key, you can be pointing forwards or backwards, and that's a cool little addition. Also, I feel like vehicles take a lot more damage than they used to when you run into things, as well as take a rocket, but the tanks do feel like a lot more of a lumbering beast, if you know what I mean. They're a lot more heavier in the way they move, and they don't have that weird arch that the original game had. They actually go where you aim most of the time now. But moving on to the class system and new weapons, we see the addition of the Australian faction, which is just fantastic, as well as lots of Australian used weapon like the Owen, F1, L2A1, L1A1. There's also impact grenades, which are absolutely devastating, as well as white phosphorus grenades. There's also the addition of popular Vietnam War weapons such as the Thompson, Grease Gun, BAR, M1 Garand, M40, M1D, but there's also some obscure weapons, well, obscure to me, such as the STG-44, which I honestly had no idea saw service in the Vietnam War, the PPS-43, the I'm sorry for stuffing that up, Grease Man, and the Carabiner, or fucking German, man, it's so hard. And honestly, to Vietnam War buffs, this might be common knowledge, but I didn't know that a lot of German weapons other than like the MP40 and the Carabiner were used. But this is literally the tip of the iceberg. There are plenty more weapons, which I can't sit here and spend like 10 minutes going over them all. But you can also find secret hidden weapons around the map. I found the FIM-43 Red Eye. I didn't actually find that. I had to literally message the creator of the mod to say, hey, where can I get this weapon? And he directed me towards it. I also found the US officer role, which allowed me to call in a supply crate and a vehicle, maybe spread them out when you call them in. I also found the VC officers class, which allowed me to create a spawn point. You also have the crew served weapons class, which allows you to deploy mortars, which, mind you, has been changed in the way they function. They are a lot more capable of hitting targets closer but at a higher altitude. All artillery pieces, excluding the Katusha and BM-21, can also switch to fire smoke grenades. The XM-17 and M16 has different variants that include the ability to use different types of grenades, as well as have a night vision scope and even a suppressed variant, or even a suppressed variant with a scope, which honestly just looks awesome. This also includes the M79 and China Lake grenade launcher, which can fire buckshots, smokes, and flares. Shotguns can't ADS anymore and instead can switch between bucks and slugs. Also, the Saboteur class can literally allow you to plant a car bomb. If this is in multiplayer, all I do is just sneak into GI's base and just plant it. We also see the addition of multiple new factions, and obviously we got the Anzacs, as well as different sort of, I don't know if you call them squads, but just different variation of the South Vietnam faction, as well as US faction, as well as the North Vietnamese. So like, and depending on what map you play on or what year the map is supposedly taking place in, it also affects the type of weapons you have, as well as vehicles. But all in all, this mod is just so much fun to play with because I can't go back to playing the original Battlefield Vietnam game. It's the same with SWAT 4 for me. Once you get a mod like SWAT Elite Forces First Responders mod that completely overhauls the game, new gameplay mechanics, new weapons, new everything, it makes the original game, I wouldn't say feel bland. That's kind of an insult to the developers, but it's like, you know, it's a night and day difference. I'd much rather play the Operation Remembrance mod than play the base game, if you know what I mean. But if you did enjoy this video, you will like the playlist that is on screen. Also, please like and subscribe. I really need these, but I'm gonna catch you guys in the next video. Peace.